next segment is going to be stage 3, which is going to be the rounding stage. We finished off on stage 2, where we have kind of a square outline of the tooth. We have the labial side, we have the mesial side, we have the lingual side, and we have the distal side. And in stage 2, we made sure that all of our dimensions were according to what was listed in the book. So for stage 3, the rounding, we're going to start out by rounding off the corners here on the root, and then rounding the corners of the crown, and then rounding the incisal edge. So in order to do the rounding, you're going to hold the root towards you, and this is going to be some very fine carving strokes. So you can take your knife and just along the edge here from the CEJ down to the apex on the root, you're going to take this corner off and you're going to round this so that it becomes that conical shape. So I'm just going to take some strokes here, and I'm going to roll the tooth backwards and forwards until we no longer have a square. It should, when I look down from the apex, it should be rounded and not at an angle. And then I turn and go to the next angle here on the root, doing the same thing, just lightly going down from the CEJ to the apex. Make sure that you don't take off any excess at the apex, or you're going to end up with a pointed root. But you want to roll the tooth backwards and forwards here. So that it creates a nice rounded area and not a point. Roll to the next. And again, just working from the CEJ down to the apex, and just rolling the root backwards and forwards. And the same thing on the last section here. So what you have when you're done is it should be a conical root all the way around. Now we're going to do the same thing for the line angles on the crown here. So we're going to hold the crown facing us, and then we'll start on one of these sides here, and from the CEJ you're going to do the same thing, rolling the tooth backwards and forwards. Same thing on this labial side over here. You can see the difference between this being round and this coming at a right angle. You need to remove that right angle, working from the CEJ and just rolling the tooth side to side. Now it's important to note that we already had our dimensions, measured our dimensions for the CEJ and also for the diameter here. So when we're taking off the corners, we're actually removing part of the wax that's at the line angle, which is not a measurable part of the tooth. You'll take your dimensions in this labial and lingual at the CEJ here, and mesial distal at the CEJ here. So when you're working on these line angles, it might seem a little strange to be able to be carving, even though you've got your dimensions already set. Okay, so we've done our facial line angles. I'm going to flip this around. And on the lingual, we're also going to round here, but we need to really make the cingulum a little bit rounder and more pronounced. So we're going to take off the angle first to the CEJ line, to the cingulum line here, and then we'll bring it slightly down the marginal ridges. So first we want to contour the cingulum, and we need to not only remove this angle here, but we really need to kind of taper it from the center out, so that way we have a nice little round cingulum. So I'm just going to start by removing that edge to round it. And then once I've rounded that, on the other side, and taking off that edge. Now to bring the cingulum in, so it's a little bit narrower, I want to take my knife and I want to place it a little bit more at an angle flat. So we're removing some more wax to create more of a taper or a slant here on both sides. So what that does, when I look down, you can see that there's more of a slant going up and down the cingulum. So I've taken off wax here and wax here to narrow my cingulum out. The last thing I need to do is, I know that my cingulum needs to be offset to the distal more than the mesial, so I'm going to take a little bit more off of the mesial side, which will kind of skew the cingulum over to the distal. The other thing that I want to do before I do my marginal ridges here is I want to thin out my root a little bit so that it matches the same slant of my cingulum here. So I'm going to take my root and match it to the same slant as my cingulum. And same thing on this side. Then to develop my marginal ridges here, I'm going to roll from the cingulum down, and the same thing on this side. I'm just going to roll from the cingulum down. And this will kind of create my marginal ridges coming down. So for stage 3, what we've done, we've rounded our root, we've rounded the crown by rounding both the line angles on the facial as well as the line angles on the lingual. The last thing that we need to do with our stage 3 is we need to round the incisal edge. And what that means is the incisal edge normally wouldn't necessarily be just straight. It's going to have a little bit of a curve, kind of like not quite like a rainbow, but a little bit of a crescent here. So I'm going to curve on the distal and the mesial here to create a little bit of a half moon kind of effect. So I'm just going to take right on the distal incisal edge. I'm going to roll it over just a little bit. Same thing on the mesial. Roll it over just a little bit. And we'll flatten this out. I need to keep my right angle. And then my distal's a little bit curved. Okay, now we're ready for stage 4.